As the next speaker, I want to introduce Mr. Tahar Boumedra, who is a former advisor to the UN SRSG in Iraq and the former chief of the human rights section of UNAMI.
Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the opportunity to be working with the United Nations in Baghdad, and I was witnessed on the ground a number of very disturbing situations of violation of human rights in Iraq, but not only by the Iraqi government, but by the intervention of the Iranian regime. And you know very well that there are special institutions organized in order to achieve this interference in the neighboring states. Besides the guards, the revolutionary guards who commit untold crimes against their own people. Now, I would like to focus on the role of the United Nations, because when the Ashrafis were persecuted and indeed slaughtered in Camp Ashraf, the United Nations used to use me to go and do the body count. And then they will issue a general statement requesting an independent inquiry. There will be no follow-up on this request. And when I was following up on these issues as the chief of Human Rights Office of the UNAMI, I was told, why do you want to revive a forgotten issue? So my fear today is that the same thing will happen with these governmental institutions, where states will cover up for friendly states, where there will be trade horsing, or horse trading rather, about human rights, the values of the United Nations, and political expediency. So this is why I think it's still time for us to call for an independent inquiry, probing into these massacres that took place not only in 1988, but from the time the Khomeini regime took power till today. And you know very well that Iran is one of the countries that execute most, and they even went as far as issuing a special letter to the United Nations telling them that we will not accept a moratorium on death penalty. It's one of the very few states in the United Nations that issued this letter. So it's clear the government of Iraq will never cooperate on any inquiry. And it's clear that a consensus among states, members of the Human Rights Council, is very difficult to achieve. And also it's clear that even in New York in General Assembly, it's quite difficult to achieve any consensus on this issue, whether in the Security Council or in the General Assembly. So I think it's left to the civil society, the NGOs, to play their full role in first making the international community aware of the scale of these massacres that took place and still taking place, and also making the international community be aware that there will never be an independent inquiry without the effective work of the civil society and the NGOs. And it's really our role to make sure that the United Nations will play its role regardless of the interests of the states members of this organization. So the reality is that the evidence actually existing about the crimes that took place, particularly in the summer of 1988, are there, and it's very difficult to question them. And with the latest revelations on the issue, it became clear that a crime against humanity actually did take place, and it's still taking place. The United Nations has recently renewed its agencies, its organs, its procedures, and I think the United Nations should take this opportunity to regain, rebuild its credibility in terms of addressing issues of human rights. There will be very soon some changes in New York. There are some changes here in Geneva. New procedures have been put in place. And I really think that it's time now for the civil society to put pressure on the United Nations special procedures and other specialized organs to play their role fully in probing the situation prevailing in Iraq. I say that, and I thank you very much.